Can you remember a time where your imagination was stretched to its outer limits, and then you heard this message, it's not possible, and yet this message was never sent? This is what I love about the Lego community, because in the Lego community, possible is only limited by our imagination. Today I want to share with you where that imagination-limiting thought comes from. In my practice, I've realized that there are laws that impact people's thinking. These laws I call the laws of our nature, because they impact our thinking in many ways similarly to the laws of nature. If you take, for example, gravity that makes this apple fall from a tree, let me just check with you quickly. By the show of hands, who of you has thought of gravity this morning? Okay. Anyone thought of gravity in the last week? Great, over there. Has anyone thought of gravity in the last month? So your hand should stay up. Great. I hope that we've got some people that believe gravity actually exists in this room. All right, but that is the point. It doesn't really matter whether you believe gravity exists or not, whether you think of gravity continuously or never. It doesn't really make a difference. And in the same way, the laws of our nature impact our working of our mind continuously. Whether we know about them or not does not make a difference. And whether we think of them regularly doesn't make a difference. They impact our lives. Today I want to talk to you about two specific laws, the law of self and the law of slip, which together create the wild horse rule. Let's start with the first law. If you look at this picture behind me, I think you would all agree, everyone in that picture is looking at the cell phone screen. And on that cell phone screen, probably everyone in that picture first looked at themselves. This is what we call the law of self, because we start with ourselves. This is our starting point. Now, all of us normal people, and you know that when a psychologist tells you you're normal, that is a joke, because we don't think you're normal. We think you're all abnormal. But all of us normal people take our thoughts away from ourselves at mid-speed. Some of us are extremely slow at taking our thoughts away from ourselves. We refer to these people as narcissists. We don't really appreciate these people. We appreciate the people on the other side, the people that take their thoughts away from themselves extremely fast. We like them because, you see, they think of us most of the time and not necessarily of themselves. When we're tired, when we're stressed, when we don't have the energy to go fetch our thoughts from ourselves, we start sliding towards that narcissistic type of being. And we become so busy with ourselves and less busy with our community. And studies have shown that this is not good for us. The next law is impacted by the same law that would impact this apple. If we take this apple and put it in the parking lot outside, and we leave it there for 3 months, when we return, it will have turned into a cell phone, a laptop, or some other amazing electronic gadget, isn't it? No, it will have changed into this. It's just natural. You see, the same thing happens with the way that we look. This is Audrey Hepburn. When she was young, extremely beautiful. She was called the most beautiful woman on the planet. They never checked Wakanda, I'm sure, but let's give them the credit, she was beautiful. All right? Here's a picture of her a little bit older, and some might perceive her as not as beautiful anymore. Let's make it more local. Here's your prize bull. Now, if you don't care for that prize bull, if you don't look after it, it might end up like that on somebody else's fire, which in my mind is an improvement. So I put this picture in just to make the point. Here's your prize bucky. That bucky that takes you to places where you want to go. And it's amazing to have such a vehicle in Namibia. If you don't service it, though, you don't look after it, it might end up like that. Now, in my mind, that might be an improvement. There was one stage of my life where I thought, you know what, I've seen people flip over a bakkie many times, but I've never seen anyone flip over a donkey cart. So I was of the impression that nobody can flip over a donkey cart, so this is actually an improvement. And then a friend of mine called Rico came up to me and said, hey, I flipped over a donkey cart once. And for months afterwards, I told people, you know what, only Rico can flip over a donkey cart. And then Rico sent me this video clip just to show that it's not only him, and it's actually not that difficult. Since then, many people have come up to me and said to me, Ziggy, if you think it is difficult to flip over a donkey cart, you have never driven a donkey cart in your life. And I must agree, I have never driven a donkey cart, and that's probably something I should try one day. This same rule impacts our relationships as well. If we don't work on our relationships, they don't magically become better. I mean, that doesn't even happen in Hollywood anymore. Maybe in Bollywood or Nollywood, but not even in Hollywood. The people have realized it's not realistic to think that a relationship would improve without us working on it. So, the same law also impacts our thoughts. Our thoughts go to the worst place they can possibly find first. Now, as I said before, we deal with this in different ways. Us normal people take our thoughts away from that worst place at mid-speed. Some of us are extremely slow at taking our thoughts away from that worst place. You know those people, you've experienced them. You don't really want to be with them because it's draining to be with them. It's difficult to stay kind of positive and enjoy life still if you are too much with people like that. And then on the other side, we have those people that are so happy and so great and so wonderful and such a great life. And you think, oh, you're on drugs or something, or what's your problem? But when we are tired, when we're stressed, when we don't have the energy to go fetch our thoughts from that worst place, our thoughts actually spiral down and it becomes worse and worse and worse. And we go sit on that grandma's lap and we start mourning with her about everything that is wrong and everything doesn't work. Now, the law of self and the law of slip together create what I call the wild horse rule. Why did I call it that? A wild horse on a homestead creates absolute chaos. And this wild horse in your mind creates at least as much, if not far more, chaos in people's lives. Allow me to demonstrate. I would like you to join me in thinking of a situation where you were really, really angry. Maybe when you were angry at a taxi or something else that really upset you. I would like you to think of the first thought you had as this incident happened. Have you got the first thought in your mind? Great. Now think with me. Is it actually a thought or is it possibly a feeling? I was so angry. I was upset. How can that be? Or was it maybe a situation? The taxi was parking in a T-junction and I couldn't get around the guy. Or was it a wish? I wish I had a bull bar that I could bump him into a ditch. Very few people give me as their first thought the worst message about themselves. And yet this is your wild horse. And this is the creator of all that other stuff that you've seen. And this is why that wild horse is so powerful. You see, it works very much like gravity. Gravity impacts our lives every day, every second of the day. And the wild horse impacts our lives every second of the day. But just as we don't think about gravity all the time, although it impacts us, we don't think of the wild horse all the time. Because you see, in our minds, we've got a conscious. This is where we know what we're thinking. And we've got a subconscious. And this is where the wild horse grazes, and we don't realize it. It's there, and it starts things in our lives, and it creates a reality that actually becomes so powerful that it becomes more powerful than the reality. I found that if I can get people just to move their wild horse into the conscious, they can start working with it. They can start changing it. They can deal with it more effectively. But in the subconscious, it builds like a puzzle piece. One puzzle piece calling another puzzle piece, and until they come together, and suddenly, as with puzzles, suddenly a picture appears. And that picture becomes your truth. And that truth is often more powerful than the truth. Allow me to demonstrate. Imagine you walk down the aisle and everyone starts laughing. You'd immediately think, what is wrong with me? And then you walk here to the front, you stand here, start talking, and somebody that truly loves you tries to encourage you by nodding, and you think, why are you nodding? And then, in the break, two of your friends are talking to each other, and because they respect you, they stop talking and turn towards you, and you know what's going to happen now. They're gossiping about me. And all those thoughts together create a picture, which now becomes your picture. And you start feeling according to that picture. You start behaving according to that picture. And you get feedback that confirms that picture. Let me give you another example. Jack and Jill. Jack is from a poor family. If you talk about finances in this family, it is stress. It is fighting. It is who is to blame, because there was never finances. There was never enough money. Jill is from a middle-class family where if you talk about finances, it is not really because there's a lack. It is to talk about how can you increase your finances, your wealth. As soon as they got married, Jill wants to speak to Jack about finances because she thinks he is great and he can do this. He is able to increase their finances. But in Jack's mind, she is telling him he's not good enough, he doesn't bring enough money home, and she doesn't respect him, which obviously makes him angry. And in his anger, he sends her a message that makes her wild horse tell her, he does not love me. And together these wild horses create a reality that is not the truth, but it's definitely their truth. And it might destroy their relationship. It's the same as Caleb, this young entrepreneur that has got such great ideas for his business and his team, and he's got specific ideas how they're going to get to these goals, and he tells his team, and somebody asks a question, and his wild horse tells him, this guy is resisting me. He doesn't want me to succeed, and aggressively, immediately shuts him up. And the team gets a wild horse that says, we're not supposed to think in this place. And they stay quiet. And Caleb sees that and he thinks, you see, they only want to resist me, they don't want me to succeed. The truth is, everyone in that team wants to succeed. But their truth is, nobody wants anyone else to succeed in this team. And they become a toxic team. And how about Bob? This very imaginative young man with the most weird and wonderful ideas. And his father sees him having these great ideas. And his father decides, I will make it possible for my son. And he works hard to get all that money together, to make these dreams, these ideas reality. But Bob never sees his dad. And his wild horse tells him, my father thinks I'm not practical enough. I am not realistic. It's not possible. This message was never sent. And yet, it will impact his imagination and steal it from him and steal the future he might have had if he had known about the wild horse. This is why I want to encourage you today to rethink. Rethink when you are talking to your spouse, your family member. Rethink what is going on in your mind. Rethink when you're talking to your colleagues and you're trying to get everyone aligned. Rethink what's happening in your mind and in theirs. Rethink when messages from the past are stealing from your future. Rethink that. Because if you rethink it, you'll start to know your wild horse. And when you know your wild horse, you can tame your wild horse. And when your wild horse is tamed, you can actually win with your wild horse. Thank you.